welcome to Track Announcer's Notebook. Pat Gonzalez along with my co-host Stuart Nodell. We're honored to have our very special guest tonight, Rick Hobbs. Rick and I go back a long, long time. We won't say exactly how many years, but we'll get to Rick to follow what has been just an amazing career. And for 2021, if you haven't heard, he has opened a new chapter in his amazing career as the race director for Moto America. We'll get into all of that racing history, some of the highlights, and talk a little bit about his new job. But as always, first up, my co-host Stuart Nodell with Nodell's Notes.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I'll just share my screen here, so just bear with me a second. And first up was this past weekend, they raced at Le Mans, France for the MotoGP World Championship Series. And it was quite an event because it was mixed conditions all weekend, really. And Jack Miller took a pretty exciting and handily beat the field with having to take 2 long lap penalty laps during the race in a flag to flag dry. Started sort of dry and damp, and then it went rain. It started raining, and then it sort of dried out near the end of the race. But it was a tough race, and he won. And following him in second place was Fabio Quartararo on the Yamaha, which was a nice rebound from the previous race in Spain where he'd suffered the arm pump that took him out of contention. So that was good for him. And then third place was Johan Zarco on the Pramac Ducati. But notable was Marc Marquez. He led this race. He had 2 crashes, fortunately not seriously hurt, but I think he's well back on his way to winning races sometime in the near future.
Well, sounds like he's got the pace, just needs the consistency now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this past weekend, it was just really difficult conditions for everybody. And in Moto 2, both actually American riders, Joe Roberts, who was running, he was in the fight for the lead in the early part of the race, and unfortunately he crashed and went down, so he DNF'd. And then the other American rider, Cameron Beaubier, who obviously Rick knows quite well, he was running in 6th place after, I think he started about 20th or 21st on the grid, but he had worked his way up all the way to 6th place, and unfortunately with a few laps left to go, he did crash and didn't finish. But at one point in the race, he had the quickest lap of the race. So I think he's looking good as he gains more experience in this class. It's certainly ultra competitive.
Rick Hobbs, we're just going to bring you in here for a minute. Have you had any conversations with Cameron since you guys last worked together in Moto America at the end of last season in terms of being a rookie in Moto 2?
No, not really. He's not a rider that needs a lot of blowing up, his ego or whatever to perform. He's such a steady rider, and the highs and lows with him are typically not as high or low as some other riders. I guess I would have to say that there's other riders I know that are way more emotional than Cam. Cam is very steady, and so I felt pretty confident that he really was ready for this challenge. And I basically said, you know what, go do your thing, work with your team, and good luck. And we text back and forth now and then when he has a good result, or as in this weekend when he doesn't, I try to give him a little don't worry about it, you'll be okay text. And so I was disappointed, of course, as I'm sure a lot of people were, that he didn't finish the race. But I think he's shown even before this last round that he belongs in this class, and it's only a matter of time until he's at the very pointy end of the field. So he's just got to keep doing what he's doing, and things will start to click for him here, I'm sure, pretty quick.
Rick, is his biggest challenge just learning these racetracks? Like, I don't believe he had been to Le Mans before.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge. You know, he's learning so many things, and you know, tires are a big part of it. You know, learning what the tire will do over race distance. There's only one way to really know that is to spend time racing it, and you know how it performs at, you know, half distance and 2 laps to go and so on, and how to get the most out of the tires. That's so important in this class where the bikes are, you know, with some exceptions, are virtually identical. But so, you know, there's the little detail things that make such a big difference. So I think he's learning, and that's one of the things with Cam that I was so impressed with working with him, is that he learns things and retains them very well. So that's why I feel like he's going to show, you know, the reason why he's a 5-time Superbike champ in the US here pretty soon. And, you know, I think before the end of the season, he's going to be a consistent threat.
Okay, Stu, what else you got on Nodell's notes?
Just got here, Ben Young announced and show I know he announced on our show a few weeks back that he had some new sponsors that he wanted to, he was kind of holding back on for things to finalize, but he did announce it late last week. So this is the new livery he'll be using on his bikes, and then you've got him in his leather suit on the left side. So hopefully once things open up, we get to see these guys on track.
Well, I love the look and the new graphics for sure.
Yeah, and then another American, Garrett Gerloff, is just about to they're about to start this weekend coming in round 1 of the World Superbike Championship at Motorland in Aragon, Spain. And then getting into Ontario racing, we've had a bit of juggling going on with the various racing series due to COVID and the extended lockdown into June. And from what we can tell, there's going to be a couple of conflicts. But SOAR is going to be starting their first race if things open up on their originally scheduled round 2, June 18th.
Yeah, they'll have a practice day on the 18th. That's Father's Day weekend. And they will run on the Saturday and Sunday, the 19th and 20th. And the race they did have scheduled back at the end of May, that is going to be moved, unfortunately, to the same weekend as the CSBK and Pro 6 GP round at Calabogie. But with the whole season being compressed, we are going to get conflicting dates. I spoke to the people at Shannonville. They, of course, anxiously awaiting June the 2nd, when the current lockdown will hopefully expire, and they are looking at kicking off their season on the June 12-13 weekend. They'll have practice on June 11th, but again, that is also the opening round of CSBK, with the caveat there is that CSBK has announced that they will not start their season until the sort of shut down Quebec-Ontario border, other than essential travel, until that border gets open, which would allow our Quebec racers in to run the Ontario events. So everything is still very, very much up in the air. And of course, for VRRA, they're looking at the July 3rd and 4th weekend to run at Calabogie. But I think, Stuart, that's contingent on them getting at least 100 entries to make it financially viable for them to rent the racetrack. So not a whole lot has changed from a year ago. A lot of stuff to be confirmed, and we're waiting to claw our way out of this current lockdown. And then all of these race organizations can look at firming up their schedules as we at least initially move ahead without race fans. But then, you know, after that, hopefully towards the end of the summer, into the fall, we can start to see some fans allowed back at the racing facilities. But it certainly has been very challenging for everybody.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Pat. And then this coming weekend, obviously our guest Rick Hobbs will have a lot to say on this matter, I would think. They're racing at VIR for Moto America.
Round number 2 of the Moto America Championship, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Stuart, have we got one more photo?
No, just an introductory photo
Oh,
here of our special guest,
okay.
Rick Hobbs.
All right, Rick Hobbs, the class of 2018 in Vancouver. I had the pleasure of being there to induct Rick as well as Steve Crevier and others, and we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. But Rick, first of all, welcome to Track Announcer's Notebook. We've been talking about getting you on the show since the announcement was made that, hey, we've got a Canadian race director with Moto America. You mean they couldn't find somebody for the gig in America? I guess not. You're the best man for the job. So welcome. How's been the first couple of months of the job going?
Oh, it's been interesting, Pat. It's quite different from what I've been used to, working on the other side, so to speak, of the paddock. But I was fortunate in being able to sit in for a few rounds last year and kind of shadow the race director and kind of get a bit of a heads up on what happens inside the race direction room. And so I was a little anxious, but I was also excited to do something, still in the racing end of things, but different from what I've done for many years as a competitor. And so I think it went fairly well. I, am lucky to have a great group of people that are in the same room with me that are there to catch me if I do make a mistake or point things out to me that I may not see right away. But yeah, I think it's something I'll grow into, and I'm looking forward to it.
Now let's go back to the beginning. A young guy growing up in the Yukon, Whitehorse, Yukon.
Yeah.
What was it like, and how many motorcycle shops were there around in Whitehorse back when you're just a kid and getting your first motorcycle?
There were actually, there was, I believe, one actual motorcycle shop, but our local department store actually sold Hondas for a while. Yeah. And there was a great group of enthusiasts, and back in those days, the manufacturers were pretty liberal with their definition of a dealer. So if you could find a couple of buddies to get some money together, you could buy 2 or 3 of a brand and they'd call you a dealer. And so you could get dealer pricing and, so on. So that was advantageous for, young guys coming up with not much money. So, but, we raced in the wintertime, we ice raced. In the shoulder seasons, we ran enduros, summertime motocross and flat track, and just had a great time, working on the bikes and racing. And in the wintertime, I was lucky my bedroom actually had a door into our garage that I could, when nobody was looking, sneak my engine into my bedroom and work on it in there in the warmth instead of out in the cold garage. So.
Wow. Rick, you come by the motorcycle career honestly. Your dad was a racer, ran a body shop, which I know you worked in for a while, but I don't think you really cared for slapping all that Bondo into metal. And how did it come about that you went to motorcycle mechanic training school, and where was that? Was that in Alberta?
No, actually, well, that was my father's idea, and he was absolutely right that I needed to do something other than body shop work, because I wasn't enjoying myself at it, and it had its moments, but it wasn't really for me. So he said, go to school and learn about motorcycles, because that was kind of my passion. So I actually wound up going to a school in California in Santa Fe Springs called American Motorcycle Schools. And I did I think it was a 4-month or 6-month it's a little blurry on time right now, but in any case, I completed that and wound up getting work in California and wound up staying there for I think about 3 years, and then kind of worked my way back up the coast and back into Canada and Vancouver. And that's where I met Gary Goodfellow and went to work for him at his Suzuki dealership in Vancouver.
Yeah, and Gary was racing at the time, and so you were going with him to Westwood on the weekends to tune his bikes.
Yep.
Gary was the first guy you really tuned for. We know just how much of a hard charger Gary was, an ex-motocross racer. What was it like those first 3 years from 82 to 85 with him?
Wow, it was pretty eye-opening. You know, it was absolutely fun. I mean, for me as a mechanic, crew chief, engine builder, there's nothing better than to see your equipment being used and used efficiently and successfully. And Gary certainly, you know, put 100% effort in and was successful. So I kind of got a taste for that, and you know, that was man, we just lived motorcycles. You know, I would work at the shop all day, all week, and then Friday night we'd load up the truck at, you know, all during the week. In the evenings I'd be working on the race bikes and getting ready to go to whatever race we went to, whether it was Westwood or Kent in Washington or the
Portland? Were you running Portland back then?
yeah. So yep, and there actually was a series that we ran, which was between the three. It was called a Can-Am Challenge, and it was between the three tracks. And so we would have racers coming from Portland and Seattle to Vancouver and vice versa. And it was quite competitive. And I think it kind of was one of the things that drove, you know, people like Gary and Steve Crevier and Daryl Fletcher and, you know, all the West Coast guys that were successful in later years going national racing.
Yeah. Now in 86, you move over to Tom Walter, and want to talk a little bit about that. But Stuart, I think we've got some questions for Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I'll just pull up the Q&A here. And our first question is from Stu Shaw, and it's for Rick. You've worked with so many different, very capable riders. Is there anyone that stands out above all the others for talent and determination?
Wow. Gosh, no, I, you know, that's such a hard question because, you know, everybody I've worked with has had their strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, I couldn't tell you one rider that I felt stood out above all the rest. I've just, no, I don't think it would be fair to the riders to say this one person was better than or you know, more important to me than any of the others. You know, each one was important to me in their own way, and I would have to say that I couldn't begin to pick one out of the bunch.
Okay, we have the next comment in from Pat Barnes, and he was just mentioning that he was there when you were crew chief for Eddie Lawson. So I think Pat's pulling for Eddie to be the favorite rider, or not necessarily the favorite rider, but the standout rider. And then,
yeah, I mean, of course, Eddie would be right up there, obviously. I mean, for me, when that all came about, my first thought was, oh my God, I'm going to have to work on the bike of a 4-time world champion. You know, I'm not worthy. So yeah, like I say, it wouldn't be fair to any of the riders to pick one out of the group.
Stuart,
and then we've got one more. We've got one more here, Pat, and it's from Mike Walsh, and he said Rick's got an open invitation to come visit him anytime up north. I know Mike has a big, basically a farm. It's about 28 acres up around the Sunderland area. And if once the borders open, Rick, with your camping rig, it'd be the ideal setting for. He's got a spring-fed pond on the property as well.
Nice. Hi, Mike. Well, thanks for the offer. And yeah, that was one of the things that we were hoping to do this, to in between events. I was hoping that the border would be open and that we'd be able to visit my family and friends in Canada. And unfortunately, right now, that's not the situation. So I'm hoping before the end of the year that we'll be able to venture north and maybe take Mike up on his offer.
Go ahead, Pat. We're all clear.
Okay, Rick, you wrap up 4 pretty good years with Gary Goodfellow. What were you able to take from those 4 years as you started working with Tom Walter, who was certainly one of the top riders, back in the mid-'80s at Westwood, along with Crevier. Goodfellow, of course, was there, but there were others like Daryl Fletcher, and it was a talented group of riders. If you won at Westwood, you earned it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think a lot of it was because the Westwood riders were used to, going to different racetracks and competing against different riders, and then having those riders come to their home track. And so I think that they got to be pretty defensive of their home turf. So, when the nationals would come, it was always a good battle in the field to, for the guys from back east that were the top riders to beat some of the local guys that perhaps weren't very well known, but were still pretty quick around Westwood.
Yeah,
So.
And Tom was very strong in in '86 and '87, but tragically, you experienced what is the low point in this sport when he was tragically killed in Japan. How did that affect you? Did you ever think at that point that maybe that's it for me as a mechanic, or was it a case where somebody like Tom would have wanted you to continue on?
It was really tough, and Tom passed in the fall. It was after our season was over, and I had just moved to Toronto actually because Tom was in line for the Suzuki Canada ride the following year, and so that was going to be based in Toronto, and so I moved out, and yeah, when I got the news, it was devastating, and so I had to rethink everything that I had planned and reconsider whether it was something I wanted to continue to do. But it was in my blood so strongly that I couldn't stay away, and I do feel like Tom would have wanted me to continue. And I mean, he was as passionate about racing as I was, and we went across country and racing in the States, and it was all on a shoestring, and had some success. And I think he was just on the steep part of his upward trajectory when he was taken from us. So I think I used that kind of as motivation that you can't let things that are out of your control guide you. You've got to make your own decisions and go with your gut and do what you think is right. And I stayed in pretty close touch with Tom's family, and I know that they were very supportive. And so yeah, it was hard, and it was a hard decision to go back to racing. And I really feel for people that are in the position where they've lost someone close to them from a racing incident. But unfortunately, that's one of the things about the sport that we love is it's dangerous at times, and things can happen that are out of your control. And so I just look at it in that regard. And I guess from what happened with Tom and other riders through the years has made me, very very aware of the safety factor in racing, and trying to be as safe as possible and not take crazy risks. And so that's one of the things that I think has been one of the backbones of my success, is that I don't take crazy risks with my riders. And you got to gamble a little bit on things sometimes to get where you want to be, but never at the risk of hurting somebody.
Right. So you're hired at McBride Cycle as I think the head of their service department there, Monday to Friday. On the
Yep.
weekends, and I think it's in '88 that you hook up with Frank Ciampini.
Right. Yeah. 1988. I actually started it off working with Art Robbins, and Art decided about halfway. It wasn't even halfway through that season, but he decided that racing was secondary to him. That he had other things that he had higher priority in his life. So we parted ways, and I was kind of a little bit adrift, so to speak. And Frank offered me a position with his team, and so yeah, we finished out the year. Paul McMillan was on the team, and Stefano Caracci came over and ran his 250 and Superbike. And so we finished out 88, and then moved on from there. We had mixed results. The Superbike for Stefano was not a good mix for him. He struggled a little bit, maybe because he was coming off of a 250 onto a Superbike. And so anyway, we finished up that year, and Frank said, I'm gonna keep the team going. Would you be interested in coming back again for the next year? So I said yes. And then in the meantime, we had conversations. Steve Crevier and I had conversations, and kind of a three-way conversation with Frank and Steve and other supporters, Yamaha Canada and Pacific Yamaha. And so it all got kind of sorted out to where we were going to go racing 3 classes, which was a big task, but we didn't really know any better. So
You guys bit off a lot there to chew, but you managed to win 3 championships, 250 Grand Prix with Steve on the Aprilia. I think at that time in my announcing career, I wanted to give back to the sport that had been so good. So I helped fund one of the 2 Aprilias that Frank ran. I was basically the guy who wrote a check to buy one of those Aprilias and go ahead and have some fun. And Steve ended up winning the 250 championship. Yourself and Steve Wyatt working on the 600 and the Superbike. You win both of those championships, and that's something that will, I don't think, ever be repeated, just partly because of the class structure currently in Canada, where a pro rider is going to win 3 national championships all in one year. Did you think you guys could accomplish that?
Boy, no. Honestly, we knew that we were in there with a fighting chance in all 3, but honestly, I never expected that we were going to pull it off. And that I have to give all credit to Steve on that, because he is so tenacious, and even when he didn't have the best bike, he would make it work and make the best of what he had to work with. And so we had a great team. We spent a lot of time together in the van driving across the country, and kind of gypsies, I guess. And so we really had a good camaraderie, and Steve Wyatt and I worked together really well, and it just was a good fit. And we had some good fortune, some other people had some bad fortune, and it just worked out. So
End of '89, the end of Team Champini as we know it, but what a way to go out with 3 national championships. You now move over and you're working with Michel Mercier in 1990. What do you recall of that Superbike championship with Michel?
Well, that was a tough one as well because, you know, Michel had this new young guy on the team, Pascal Picot, you may have heard of him, who was really, you know, hitting his stride and on identical machinery. And so, you know, as most people will tell you in racing, you know, the first guy you have to beat is your teammate. And so that was a tall order. But, you know, we worked hard at it, and we managed to win some races. And you know, Michel, again, you know, you talk about a guy that has the passion and determination for racing. He was the epitome of that. And so it was kind of easy for us to I don't know, build him a bike that he could use. And he really liked the OW01 Yamaha, and it was quite different from his previous bikes. Just the character of the bike, and it suited him. So, I think the fact that he only concentrated on the Superbike was a benefit to him too. He didn't have to worry about, you know, a 600 or 250 or whatever else. He was just on the Superbike. So again, you know, Michel and I have stayed good friends, even though we're a long ways apart. And I was hoping that I was going to get to see him in person this year, but maybe next year.
Yeah, and as I think most folks know, at the end of last year, Michel sold the Fast Riding School, but that school produced some of our most incredible riders over the years. And you went to work for one of those in 1991 and 92 in Lindley Clark, and ended up winning a couple of 600 production championships. What were those 2 years like with the pride of Barrie, Ontario, Lindley Clark?
Yeah, well, and again, Lindley and I have stayed in touch, and we're still good friends. And he's still just as competitive, but on a bicycle now instead of a motorcycle. But yeah, we had a great couple of years, and you know, we were very close to winning a Superbike championship as well. I think we were only 1 point out of the championship in 92, 91 or 92. I forget the years now, but that was a little, you know, after all the work of racing both those bikes all year long and coming up just that little bit short. I know I felt the sting, and I'm sure Lindley did as well.
So Rick, the following year you make the big move to the United States, and we're going to get to that. But first, I want to go to Stuart and Odell. I think we've got another question or two in the Q&A. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I've got a couple here. First, Pete and Carol Swedish would like to say hi to Rick, and they're so happy he's running the Moto America program, and I'm sure he knows them as racing super fans. They're the best people that you can have at the races.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Pete. Hi, Carol. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've seen you guys, but yeah, it's always great to see you. And yeah, super fan is the best description, I think. And but such great people. They're just so warm and friendly, and you know, they're friends with everybody in the paddock, I think.
Yeah, and Rick, just fair warning, they won't be at VIR this weekend as far as I know, but I think they do have plans to go to Road America, which I think is one of their favorites because they love the bratwurst there.
Yeah, yes, as most people do. That's one of the big reasons to go to Road America is for the brats.
Forget the racing, just give me a dozen bratwurst. Stuart, right. Anything else before we talk about 1993?
Yeah, we just have one other question for Rick, and it's just more along the lines, Rick, you've worked with a few families like the Haydens, the Bostroms, and the Goberts. How was it to coach siblings racing in the shadow of elders' success that came before them, and also how was it dealing with the parents?
Wow, great question. Honestly, I can't think of a negative. All the parents were, really good to work with. Never felt that soccer mom, soccer dad kind of mentality affecting what we were trying to do. Um, and it's hard, I think, for younger siblings coming up to kind of fill the shoes of their successful older siblings. And sometimes, there's tension that comes from that. But there was never anything that was a problem. Although I do remember one event where, no names, but an older brother said something to the younger brother and tears ensued. And so it was a little challenging, that one, but by and large, it was, I wouldn't say easy. It's never easy. That wouldn't do justice to the work that everybody else that's involved in the various teams I've been in, wouldn't do them justice. But I wouldn't say it was difficult. I actually I enjoyed seeing the progression. I still do enjoy seeing the progression of younger riders as they come up. And I think when they have an older sibling to emulate, that gives them a target to shoot for. And so they probably advance. Well, I shouldn't say probably. They may advance a little bit faster because of that.
And Rick, you're seeing that right now in Moto America with the Wyman brothers, three very talented riders.
Yep.
Before we went to the Q&A, we got up as far as 1993. You get hired by Vance and Hines to work with Jamie James, who Canadian fans would know. He had a number of rides up here in Canada. But Jamie gets hurt before the start of the season, and Yamaha is able to convince four-time world champion Eddie Lawson to ride their bike a one-off at Daytona. So first race for Rick Hobbs, was it intimidating at all that you're going to be working with Eddie Lawson? So this bike better be fast and reliable.
Yeah, it was intimidating for sure. It was, man, coming from Canada, I had pretty big eyes, starting with one of the bigger teams in the series in the US. And I knew Jamie from Canada, and we had socialized a little bit. And so I felt pretty comfortable around him, but I didn't know Eddie at all. All I knew was, he's a four-time world champion amongst other things, and, US champion, and obviously a very talented guy. And so, yeah, I was definitely anxious. And I think he kind of put my mind at ease, though, when he came in to the garage the first time, and I was like, trying to fit the bike for him. And so I said, would you mind sitting on the bike and we'll adjust everything, to fit? And he jumped on the bike and he played with the clutch, played with the front brake, shifter, rear brake, did a little movement on the seat, slid back, got into a tuck, and he goes, "Oh, everything's good. Just leave it." I'm like, really? Okay. So that was one of my first clues that the rider is probably the most adaptable thing on the motorcycle. That, as much as you do to the motorcycle to improve it, the rider makes the biggest difference. And Eddie certainly proved it. I mean, he got on that bike without us touching a thing and was fast immediately. And then as, the time started coming down and he started getting, to tenths of a second that he was trying to pick up, then we started adjusting things and trying to find some better settings for him. And another Canadian, Dale Rathwell, was on our team and was instrumental in the suspension and geometry settings on the bike. And so, yeah, we got a pretty good package for him as far as the chassis straight away. But we had some new parts that we had to fit to the bike at the racetrack. And we struggled with some reliability issues, and yeah, it was a challenge. There were a lot of late nights and a lot of engine swaps.
Okay, so you went through how many motors before you got to qualifying?
I think we had the engine in and out of that bike close to 10 times over the course of the week. Yeah.
But then you get to qualifying, and Eddie qualifies seventh. Were there specific issues in qualifying? Because you would figure Eddie Lawson would be on the front row, if not the pole.
Right. Well, the biggest thing was back then they ran the twin 50s, the qualifying races
Right.
for the 200, and in the 50-mile race that Eddie was in, we had a tire fail, so we had to do a pit stop. So it was basically a sprint race that we had to do a pit stop, and you still finished third. And so I still got that trophy, by the way, third place from Daytona on the twin 50. So that was why, and he was in, I believe we were in the slower heat. I'm not sure how they staggered
the seventh on the grid. But
yeah.
Interestingly enough, the two guys on the front row that you both tuned for, Pascal Picot on the Fast by Ferracci Ducati, and Crevier on the Muzzy Kawasaki, teammate to Scott Russell, who was on the pole. So between the twin 50s and the Superbike race, how much did you change that bike where, you know, Eddie felt that he had one of the fastest bikes for the race?
Well, we had one engine that we felt was probably our best engine, and we put it in for gosh, I forget which session it was, but it was only in the bike for one session. We pulled it back out and said, okay, this is our race engine, we're going to save it. And so we ran all the rest of the remaining sessions before the race with a workhorse engine, let's say. And so between morning warm-up before the 200, we put in the good engine, the race engine. But when we went to start it, it was only running on 3 cylinders. And you know, time was pretty tight between the warm-up and the race. So we were in the garage working on the bike, trying to get it running, while Eddie was out on the grid doing interviews with no bike. And so we finally discovered that there was an issue, an interference between one of the coolant pipes and the carburetors. And carburetors weren't fully seated in the boots. So we very quickly got the carburetors in place with the help of a ball peen hammer on the coolant pipe, and threw the bodywork on very quickly and rolled the bike out. As we were rolling the bike out, we were finishing fastening all of the Zeus fasteners, and we get to the grid with the bike, and Eddie's standing there like it was totally normal. Like this is something that happened, like it was like he was just, this was normal for him. I'm like, this guy is cool as a cucumber. And so anyway, that was very stressful, just to add on to all the stress leading up to the race week or the race day. And so when the race started and everything appeared to be working okay, it was like this huge sigh of relief. But we still had, you know, in those days, it was a balance between getting a tire that was grippy enough to do lap times and durable enough to last between tire changes. So we were a bit nervous about tires. I think everybody was. It was at the front of the field. You know, it was not a mystery that the track was hard on tires. So yeah, as the laps ticked down, we were like, wow, we're in this, you know, we can win this. So it became apparent that it was going to be down to Eddie and Scott Russell, and man, that last couple of laps were pretty intense. You know, it was, I like to say when my rider's on the racetrack that I feel like I'm there on the bike with them almost, you know, and that focused on what is going on with with the bike and with the rider. And yeah, so I was riding along on the high banks, just hoping that everything held together and that we didn't have any further issues.
Yeah. Well, Russell had the lead into the chicane. He got hung up with, I think, Chuck Graves, who was running out of fuel. And Eddie jumped on the opportunity, took the lead, and took the win. What do you remember of being in victory lane there with Eddie in '93 and the pride and the jubilation that you felt?
Wow, it was more relief than anything, I think, is just getting through it and surviving. It was that tough of a week. And yeah, I mean, there's no other feeling like it when you've had so much adversity and you come out on top. I mean, it's a fantastic feeling, and it's probably why I kept doing it for so long. Is you keep looking for that feeling again. So yeah, I mean, especially in a situation where you got, it's a team. It's not just an individual anymore. It's the rider, the bike, and the team behind, and everybody that works so hard to make it happen, and the camaraderie you have with those people. So
yeah, well, an amazing start to your U.S. career, Rick, in '93. You continue on with Jamie James. You win Super Sport championships. Tom Kipp, riding for you guys, wins a 750 Super Sport championship. But then later in the '90s, you move over to Herrin Honda. And I want to pick up on the Herrin Honda years. But first, I'm going to go back to Stuart and Odell. I think we've got a couple of other questions. Stuart?
Yeah, Pat, we'll try and tie them in together because they kind of revolve around the same people. But Henry DeGao wants to ask Rick what his memories were of the 1986 CAW GP. And the first Canadian to compete there was Art Robbins, if he's daring to share any stories from the awards banquet following the event.
Well, yeah, thanks, Henry. You kind of put me on the spot. Well, unfortunately, Art's no longer with us. So, I think we can share a little bit of the story because, it's not going to hurt anybody at this point. But, Art crashed during the race, and he crashed pretty hard. He took a pretty good hit. So he was given some painkillers by the medical staff, and the organizers had a big dinner planned for everybody that participated, all the car racers, all the bike racers, at the one of the big hotels in Macau. And so it's a big room and a big table with a lot of high-powered people sitting around it. And by the time dinner rolled around, Art had a couple of beers on top of the painkillers that they'd given him. And so he was feeling no pain. And he was being Art, which was pretty entertaining at times. But poor Henry was, Art was one of his crew, so to speak. So yeah, Henry pulled me aside and he goes, "Man, you got to get him out of here before he says something that's gonna upset people." So anyway, I had to corral Art and take him up to the room and put him to bed, so he wouldn't dig himself a deeper hole, so to speak.
And Henry was allowed back for several years after that to run the North American team.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you saved Henry DeGao's job there in Macau, is what you're telling us.
That's pretty much it. So Henry, I think you probably owe me there.
All right, he'll catch up with you at a Moto America race. Rick, we want to jump quickly through the next little while because time is our enemy. You move on to Herrin Honda in 1998. And then like 10 years earlier with Crevier in '89, in '99, you've got Nicky Hayden and Curtis Roberts on the team. Roberts wins the Formula Extreme championship. Nicky wins Super Sport. is that one of the highlights of all your years with the AMA and now Moto America Championship?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those actually the 3 years, really, the first 3 years with Herrin were all highlight years. I mean, the first year, Eric Bostrom won the Formula Extreme. Then the next year, Nicky won the Super Sport. Curtis won Formula Extreme, and then 1990, Curtis won 600 Super Sport and Formula Extreme. Just it all kind of blends together because we were running. Gosh, well, 98 we had, I think when we loaded the truck to go to Daytona, we had 12 motorcycles in there, all Herrin Racing motorcycles. And so, we had a big team and a lot of stuff going on, a lot of balls to keep in the air, juggle a lot of balls at the same time. So I kind of put all those 3 years together in that, we were running essentially the same motorcycles. We had, a really good crew, and it all gelled and clicked. And, of course, with riders of that caliber, Eric and Nicky and Curtis, you give them something halfway decent and they're gonna make it work. So.
And your championship winning ways continues, after the Arion years with Josh Hayes, Jake Zemke, and then after those years, you actually spent a year working for a company that was building McLaren Can-Am replicas.
Mm-hmm.
Why the move sideways out of motorcycling to car racing? Is that something you always wanted to give a try?
Well, so 2009, there was a pretty big contraction in the racing industry in the US, at least, and Herrin Racing wasn't going to be contracted for the following season, 2010, from American Honda. So I had, to be honest, I didn't have that many opportunities in the motorcycle racing industry, and there were big changes happening, and I felt like maybe my time had run its course in motorcycles. So one of our former suppliers at Herrin for composite materials and carbon fiber bodywork and so on had this car project he was working on, and so I thought it was pretty interesting and pretty cool what he was doing. And I thought, man, that's something I'd like to try. So I got involved with that and worked at that for about a year and a half. And it was fantastic experience. I got to do a lot of things that were outside my comfort range, so to speak. But I still had that nagging urge to go back to motorcycle racing, and so I went back on a part-time basis in 2011 with Yamaha, with Chris Clark, and that really confirmed for me that that's what I wanted to do. The car thing for me was a little too foreign and different, and I didn't like crawling underneath the race vehicle to work on it. I like to stand beside it and work on it. So anyway, I was fortunate in that Yamaha had a position they could offer me, and that kind of started the ball rolling with me getting back with them full time.
Yeah. And then following the year with Chris Clark, you're working with Josh Herrin as he wins championships. And then probably the era that you're probably best known for are the 6 years with Cameron Beaubier, who we talked about racing Formula 2 in the World Championship this year. 6 years with Cam, 4 Superbike championships. How satisfying was it with what you were able to accomplish in those 6 seasons?
Yeah, man, it honestly didn't feel like it was 6 years. It went by pretty quickly. But you know, we had a great team, and everybody, you know, pulled together, and we truly were a team. So, you know, even though there was multiple riders, we all pulled together. If there was somebody that needed something, it kind of reminded me of the '89 season with Steve Wyatt and myself, and the way we supported each other, and that was the way it was working at Yamaha. It was a great group of guys to work with, and obviously having Cam riding my bike, as talented as he is, and as determined as he is, you know, just, man, it was kind of a blur, to be honest, because, you know, when you go from one season to the next, and you back up championships, and winning races, multiple races in a year, and against, you know, some pretty stiff competition, it's really gratifying. And you know, I guess for me, that kind of was, you know, when I started thinking about, gosh, you know, what do I want to do from here? Because I was pretty sure that Cam was going to move on, and that you know, I wasn't in a position to go to Europe with him, even if he had wanted me to. You know, I'm not young enough to take that on anymore. So I decided that, you know, 2019 was going to be my last year, and man, I was lucky enough to go out on a high note. We won the championship, and you know, it was just, you know, we had won the previous season as well, and, you know, 4 Superbike championships. Excuse me. Anyway, yeah, it was perfect timing. Couldn't have asked for a better ending to my career in road racing, so I thought. And then this opportunity came along with Moto America, and I thought, man, this is something I could do, and I believe in the series, and the people that are behind it, and I think that they're doing things the right way, and I'd like to be part of it.
Yeah, Rick, I don't know if you had a hand in those 2 Canadian guys who are still part of the team. So there's still a pretty good Canadian content there with Jonathan Cornwell and Darren Marshall. Mixed bag at the opening round, a win and a DNF, but I'm sure that team's going to be one of the teams as we get down to the final few rounds vying for the championship with Jake Gagne. Have you spoken to those guys at all at Road Atlanta?
Well, you know, my situation at the racetrack is pretty different these days, whereas I used to be, you know, pretty much able to keep an eye on everything that's going on in the paddock. And, you know, I'd see people at the podium or in post-race tech, or, you know, it was pretty social. And now my role is I go into a closed room at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in there for the whole day. And I come out, and the sun's getting low in the sky, and everybody's packed up and gone home. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll have to see if I can see my friends at the next round. So,
all right, Rick, it's been awesome spending an hour with you, or sort of reliving and revisiting an incredible career that I think still has a long way to go on the other side of the pit wall as race director with Moto America. I just wish that our racing here in Canada is as open as it is in the United States right now, and not just motorcycle road racing, all of the other forms of motorsports with crowds going back into the grandstands. Hopefully we can see that in the weeks and months to come and get our racing season over, and hoping that border gets open soon, that when you've got the time, you can make it back up across the border to visit with your many friends. It's been an honor having you on the show. And I think, Stuart, we may have one final question for Rick before we wrap it up.
Yeah, Pat, it was just in from Nathan Asland, and I have to agree that we need another Rick episode because there's too many stories to share and just not enough time.
Well,
Kind of like friend Steve Crevier.
yeah. Well, that's another story. We could have had Rick on here for 3 hours. We need an hour just to cover the Crevier travels. But Rick, all the best this weekend at VIR for a great weekend. And you guys will be going back to Brainerd, one of my favorite tracks. And I think Pete and Carol are going to catch up with you and buy you a bratwurst at Road America a little bit later on in the season. Be well.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Thanks, Pat. It's been great being on here.
Okay, thanks, Rick. And again, our thanks to Rick Hobbs, Stuart O'Dell.
Yeah, just want to say thanks. And again, we do have the YouTube channel, the Track Announcers Notebook. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. And once we upload the videos every week, you'll get a notification that it's up live.
Okay. So we'll wrap up this edition of Track Announcers Notebook. Next Monday is Victoria Day Monday here in Canada. We will have a show next Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. Again, our thanks to Rick Hobbs as he heads to VIR for the big race this weekend. We'll see you back here next Monday night on Track Announcers Notebook.